80 degrees in LA. I need to be where you are.
Because
Man,
warm here.
warm. I thought that it was going to be nice being in Miami because my family is all in Miami and I thought it was going to be warm there. It's like 40, 50 degrees.
I heard it was like 38, Miami,
Yeah.
way to Florida.
Beautiful day in Florida. So it's warmer today? Love that.
How warm is it?
Hopefully warmer than here. It's 36 degrees today. Not feeling it, but All right. Welcome in, everyone, and thank you again for joining CreateHER Fest today. As usual, this is a safe, intentional space for women, gender-expansive folks, and allies to discover, design, and deliver. CreateHER Fest, if you don't know, exists to bridge the gender gap in tech through hands-on training in AI, AR, VR, blockchain, and all kinds of emerging technologies. So our overall goal is that you leave with something you can actually use. Before we dive in, quick introduction on who's holding space with you today. My name is Darlise Calix. If you don't know me, I've said this so many times. If you do know me, great. But I'm a serial technologist, co-founder of CreateHER Fest. I'll be your host today. I'll also be helping keeping an eye on time, questions, and making sure that you have what you need. If you have any questions or if you need support at any point during this workshop, logistics, access-wise, or just need us to drop any links, feel free to reach out to us directly in the chat. I will be there, but also our volunteers, our CreateHER Fest volunteers will also be in the chat, as well as my co-founder, Adrienne. So, quick tech overview so you can get the most out of today. One, use the chat. Please feel free to introduce yourself, put your name, put where you're located, where you're calling in from. I say calling in from like it's like one of those radio shows, but yeah, feel free to put your location as well. And your LinkedIn if you want to connect with people. Okay, perfect. And then respond to prompts as well, share what you're learning, but also use the Q&A feature. If you look down below, if you're coming in on like a computer, you'll see a sort of like grid icon next to the chat icon, and that'll say meeting tools. If you click on that, you'll see a Q&A feature. So if questions do pop up that you want us to ask, we'll either ask during the presentation if it makes sense to, or we'll leave them towards the end, just depending on what the question is. Occasionally, you will see a poll pop up on the screen. That's just our way of gauging the room and adjusting the pace and depth in real time. We just like to know what's going on with you in real time because we're nosy like that, but we also care like that. So since CreateHER Fest is about skills and community, I wanted to take a moment to share in the chat something that an amazing CreateHER, Natasha, she created a Google Sheet for everyone to sort of stay connected. And so if you are interested in connecting with other builders within this space, highly recommend, dropping your info in there. Let us know and let other people know like what you're interested in collabing on. So thank you. I always say thank you to Natasha for creating that. She created that on day one. All right. So quick poll before we get started, just to, get everybody going. Quick poll. What is your, what's your current experience level with avatar systems or virtual characters? Have you never worked with avatars before? Have you seen them in demos, tutorials, haven't built one yet? Maybe you've built them before, but, not really pre-programmed or anything. Maybe you've built interactive avatars with some behavior logic, or maybe you're super experienced. Like this is not going to be anything new to you at all. So let us know in the poll. Excellent. Thank you so much for responding. And this just helps us gauge where you're at instead of wondering where you are, essentially. So everything we're doing today is part of the larger 75-day, 75-her builder journey. So all workshop recordings will be uploaded to our YouTube within 24 hours. We'll also share them in a Discord resources channel. If you're not in our Discord, please join. A lot of information is going to be there. And as we're gearing up for the next phase of this journey, a lot of information is going to come out through there as well as via email. So we'll post any slides, links, templates, anything mentioned today. That way you can rewatch, pause, apply the things that you're learning at your own pace in case like maybe we go a little bit fast today. That's okay. You can always rewatch and do it on your own, or hop in the Discord and do it with other people. You can always host a little bit of a watch party. So with that, I yapped a lot. Give me a thumbs up if we're feeling good, if we're feeling excited about today's workshop. Excellent. We're feeling good. I'm excited. I'm super excited to introduce our facility for today. April, I'll stop yapping now and let you take it away.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the intro. Thanks for getting everybody excited and ready to have fun. Hi, everyone. My name is April Gittens, and I am bringing to you what I feel to be a very intro base level workshop for using 3D characters and adding animations and leveraging AI to actually invoke those animations. So if all that sounds familiar, then you're in the right place. If you didn't know that this is the topic, that's fine. You can stay as well. So there's a lot to cover. There's a lot of things to cover in here. And so I will take you through everything in terms of setup and such. Let me get myself to the next page here. Here we go, introduction. So this is me. So I founded the brand Pretty Wired Builds last year, actually, and a lot of it stemmed from my joy of experimenting. I'm a self-taught programmer, and I also started diving more into electronics within the past year, but I've been programming now since 2013, I want to say. So it's been a couple years now. I used to work in luxury fashion. I was a menswear stylist and a visual merchandiser, and then I came over into tech. I got my start in Python. I was just learning and teaching for fun until I realized that it's an actual job to teach people Python at tech companies. And that's how I found out about working in developer relations. And so today, that's actually where I'm at Microsoft. I've been here now for 7 years at Microsoft. And most recently, I came back to being a manager again. I was a manager in the past, back when I used to work in the extended reality space. But as of now, I am a manager for our Python team. So I lead a group of very, very intelligent Python devs. But before stepping into that role, as I mentioned, I worked in the extended reality space, which encompasses everything augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality. And so I did a lot of work with the HoloLens as well as with the various VR headsets. So the Meta Quest, for example. And then I got into doing things more with mobile and then also with web. And my intro to web was working with Babylon.js. If you've never heard of that, I would definitely say give it a try. We are going to take a little quick look at Babylon.js today, but we're actually going to be leveraging Three.js for what we're building. So with that said, in terms of what we are building, so if you've ever wanted to make a 3D character, animate, or do something, like I said, this workshop is going to be the stepping stone. I will provide you all with a link to the repository where you can access all the code for today. I've taken the pleasure of writing all the code already. So what we need to do for this workshop is just plug in different values here and there. And so that should hopefully help anyone that might not be as familiar with JavaScript. And so in terms of what we're going to be doing, we're going to be building a functional avatar behavior prototype, and it's going to trigger emotions or animations based on a large language model. And so we are letting AI choose the emotion or the animation, if you will, that gets invoked. And I'll show you how you can set something like that up. And we're going to be using if-then logic, essentially. So if, let's say, someone submits a message that says, it's my birthday, for example. It's not my real birthday, but if someone said it's my birthday, what we are going to have AI do is assign an emotion to that. So more so like intent behind that, emotional intent. So a phrase like it's my birthday typically would be a happy phrase. So what we want the AI to do is take that message and say, okay, this message means it's happy. Therefore, I'm going to play the happy animation. And so that's what we're going to be building in Visual Studio Code. And so that also then ties into the objective 3 is just understanding the logic behind having the large language model prompts and the output that we get from the language model and how that output can then be passed over into the actual code that or the logic that we have in our code that'll invoke whatever animation gets played. I know it may sound like there's a lot that we're doing here, but trust me, everyone, like I said, this is very intro level. We could get super deep, advanced, but that's not this session. This session is the intro level. Also, I will say, if you've already been exploring this space, you'll likely come to realize that there's various ways that you can approach doing something like this. And so this is just one way you can go about doing it. I will say when I first gave this a try, I may have gotten this set up in probably really an hour and a half, like the length of this workshop. And that was me going into this with just a tiny bit of knowledge. So over time, I've gotten quicker at it. But all that's to say, this isn't a day-long project of just getting set up. Once you're set up, then you can expand on what I'll be showing today. You can just add so many different things. With that said, I know we've shared in advance the different tools that we'll be using. What I'm curious to know in the chat is who will be following along live, meaning who will also be trying things out as I go. It's very important for me to know that because that'll help me pace myself to make sure that I provide the appropriate time for folks to catch up. And also it'll just let me know where I might need to dive a little deeper into what setup entails. So I do see we have some me's from Brittany. Okay, so I see some folks are trying it. If you decide not to try it here live, that's also fine too. As mentioned, this will be shared afterwards, so you're more than welcome to try it out later. And yeah, I'll also incorporate a break at some point here because we're going to be together for quite some time. So I want to make sure we have a moment to ourselves as well. All right. Let's keep it moving. So for the agenda, this is what we're going to be doing in its entirety today. First, we're going to go through the environment setup. I did this part first on purpose, just in case someone doesn't have something installed already. I don't want to start diving into the how, and then you're still trying to install Blender. So I'm going to take you through the environment setup, and hopefully that'll provide sufficient time to download and install some of the tools that you're going to need. That also entails any API keys that you're going to need as well. There are going to be 2 API keys that you will need in order to follow this code sample that I'll give you. The second is going to be, we're going to download an avatar. In the event there's too many avatars to choose from and you're like, you know what, I just need one avatar and I'm ready to go. That's fine too, because in the code sample that I'll provide you in just a moment, I actually include a model in there already. That 3D model is also equipped with animations. And so with that said, if you're using the model that's already in the code sample, when we get to the next stage, which is combining the animations, you won't actually need to take those steps if you're using the model I provided. But, oops, sorry about that. But if you are downloading a brand new model from Mixamo, which is where we're going to go get models, then you will complete all the steps that we have here. So I'll restate that again when we get to that point, but that's just foreshadow for what's to come. But in terms of where we're getting those avatars from, they're going to come from a platform called Mixamo. I personally really like using Mixamo because they provide free models, free animations, which if you're not an animator, it's like one of the best things because they do a lot of the hard work for you. And I'll get into Mixamo in a bit. Once we have that model, we're then going to combine the animations in Blender. Blender is a 3D modeling software, and there's other 3D modeling softwares out there available. Blender happens to be the one that I'm most familiar with. And I also know this workflow works in Blender, so that's why we're going to use that. Blender is completely free. There's a lot of buttons in there. I'm going to warn y'all right now. So when we get into Blender, I'll take you on a very brief tour of what's going to be essential for this workshop. But if you are interested in learning more about creating your own animations, because you can create your own animations actually in Blender, or if you want to know more about 3D modeling, I highly recommend YouTube. There's a lot of videos on YouTube about all those topics. And so I would say check that out if you want to explore more around 3D model creations, animations, so on and so forth. You can make movies in Blender. There's a lot you can do in there. All right. And then animation controller. We're going to add an animation controller. That sounds way more convoluted than what it is. It's going to essentially be just a few lines of code in Visual Studio Code. So when we head into Visual Studio Code, what we're going to need to do is provide the logic, which I provided it for you, but we're going to tweak it if anyone wants to tweak it. But essentially, it's logic that's going to determine which animations get invoked based on the intent of the message. And then finally, we're going to add some AI voice at the end. And so we're going to be using, for the animation controller and the LLMs, essentially, we're going to be using Anthropic. So if anyone here is familiar with Claude, for example, we're going to be using, I believe, Claude Sonnet 4.5, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of the model, but we'll get into that when we get there. And then for the AI voice, we're going to be using ElevenLabs. ElevenLabs happens to be the platform that I prefer most for AI voices. If you've never done anything with AI voices, prepare to be overwhelmed in a good way. The reason why I say that is because ElevenLabs has a ton of AI voices on there. And some of them are kind of like creepily really good, I will say. You also have the option to, I believe you can create your own AI voice as well on ElevenLabs. I have not personally done it on their platform. I've done it on another platform. And if you haven't done anything with AI voices with your own voice, let me tell y'all, it sounds just like you. Like it's the most wildest thing. But yes, Claudette, I'm about to start naming my Claudette. I just saw that in the chat. Yeah, so we're going to dive a bit into AI voices. Likewise, like I mentioned with the model, if you get to a point where you're like, you know what, I just need an AI voice because there's too many to choose from, I got you. I have one already set up in the sample code as well, but I will show you how you can swap that out. Now, in terms of the model that I'm providing and the voice that I'm providing, as a heads up, the model I'm providing, her name is Michelle. I didn't name her. That's what Mixamo calls her. She's Black woman, puffballs. I think she has headphones on, like some sweatpants. And then the voice itself, it's her name, the name is like Nia, I believe, and it's a Black woman's voice. So just as a heads up. All right. Yes, as Adrienne said, don't give them your voice biometrics, y'all. However, I will say this as an alternative that's unrelated to this workshop. You can actually create AI voices, not with your voice, but there's other means of creating AI voices and actually monetizing that. So platforms like ElevenLabs do have that avenue. If you're one of those like AI creators that's like deep into monetizing what you create with AI, you can actually submit AI voices on their platform and you can get paid for the usage of it. So that's just a little tidbit in case anyone's out there wondering about that. I'm gonna scroll up in the chat for a little bit just to make sure I didn't miss anything. All right, okay, cool. So let me go forward. This link here on the screen is where we are going to get started. You're going to go to github.com/April Gittens/3JS avatar. And so this is where I have listed all of the requirements for this workshop, so all the technical requirements, anything that needs to be downloaded, anything that needs to be gotten, like a API key. And this is also where you can find all of the code for this workshop. If you want to jump ahead and clone this repository, you're more than welcome. However, I accounted for that. So we're going to do that a little later in the workshop. So for now, what I would like for everyone to do is go to this website that I have here on the screen. And I'm going to switch my screen to it as well. I do see that the link has been placed in the chat, so perfect. And let's go through what's happening on here. Okay, so All right, y'all have to bear with me. Okay, so I will need someone to validate and verify what's currently shown. I can see it. Okay, cool. You should see the GitHub repository for this project on the screen. I'll zoom in for you all too, just in case. And I see thumbs up. All right, awesome. So this is a repository. Also, if you're not familiar with GitHub or like what it is, what a GitHub repository is, this is GitHub. Welcome to GitHub. If you don't already have an account, create an account. It's a really good platform to use for sharing code, working with others, and collaborating with code as well. But this is also where you can find the code for this workshop. And within this repository, if we scroll down, just below is what I have called the README. And in the README itself, I have a section that says prerequisites. So in the prerequisites list, this is where we're going to hang out for just a little bit. The first thing that we're going to need is Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is a code editor where you can go and do your code. There's various code editors that are out there and available that you could always use. But for this workshop, VS Code, which it's also known for, is what we're going to use. So you're going to download and install that. Next, there's going to be Node.js that will also need to be installed. And I'm actually going to give you the link to that one because I don't think I gave that one in advance. So I'll put that one in the chat. Node.js is what's going to allow us to do things with JavaScript, to make a long story short. Then there's going to be Blender. And actually, let me take you just page by page here. So VS Code, this is what the URL will look like when you click that link. And what you'll do is you'll download for your respective operating system. I'm on Windows right now, so mine says download for Windows. If you're on a Mac, for example, it might say download for iOS, for example. So that's VS Code. Node.js, as I mentioned, this is what the download page is going to look like. Don't be tricked like I was, because this first top section does a download for Docker. We're not containerizing anything for this. What I recommend is to scroll down a little bit, and then you're going to get the pre-built Node.js for your respective operating system. So for me, Windows was the default, but there's also Mac OS, Linux, AIX. Most likely, you're either going to choose Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. But once you've selected that, you're going to select the Windows installer.msi for Node.js. In the event you skip this step and we start doing things in Visual Studio Code, when you try to run an npm command, it will tell you that Node needs to be installed. So I would recommend doing this part now. And then the next thing that I have on my list is Blender. So Blender, as I mentioned, is where you can go and create 3D models. You can create animations, you create movies. There's a lot you can do in there. But this is what we're going to be using for combining all the animations for the model that we're working with. So you'll download Blender and you'll install that. Once you have it installed, don't touch anything in there. There's a lot that's going to be happening in there, but we're not going to use all the buttons in there. And then the next thing that you'll need is a Mixamo account. You do not need to download Chocolatey with Node.js. And yep, Adrienne said as well, you do not have to. So thanks for calling that out. Mixamo, you're going to need to create an account on here. The account is going to be free. It's helpful to have the account for keeping track of things that you download and such, but this is what the webpage looks like. That's also the 3D model we're using, or at least the one that I provide in advance if you don't want to get your own. So that's Michelle, as I mentioned, black woman, puffballs, headphones, sweatpants. So you're going to go to Mixamo, make sure that you have your account set up on here, because if you don't, you're going to be asked to create an account when we go to look at characters. And then the next thing that I have listed is going to be an Anthropic API key. So I'll drop this link specifically. I think the link already was shared in the chat though for getting your keys and such. Let me see. Yeah. Once you have your keys, we're going to land here on this dashboard page, and this is where we're going to go and actually create the key. We'll create the key together later, but for now, get an account set up. And there is a fee associated with this. I believe for Claude, I don't remember how much I've set up with mine. Let me see if I can see. See if we can see. All right. So yeah, so I think I might have put $25 on mine. And then Jasmine says $5 for begin building. $5 is honestly what I would choose if you're getting started. So you don't have to go as high as mine. I do a lot with Anthropic models beyond just this workshop. So 25 seems to always hold me over. But if 5 sounds awesome to you, go with $5. Same thing applies for ElevenLabs. With ElevenLabs, you're going to also be creating an account, and we're going to create a key together later for ElevenLabs. So ElevenLabs, and I believe that link was also already pasted in the chat, but I'll pop this in here again. $5, I think, for ElevenLabs, if I'm not mistaken, as well, for getting started. So that takes me to everything that we're going to need in terms of the prerequisites. And so if you're having any issue downloading any of those things that I've mentioned, let me know. I can try to help you through it as best as I can. But that's going to be where we're kicking things off in terms of what needs to be installed. All right, so let me head back on over to my presentation that I have. Okay, so we're going to actually start diving now into all the fun part. We're going to start working with models, so on and so forth. And so to kick things off, we're going to be focusing on getting the 3D avatar. Before we dive into that, there are some things I want to make sure that I call out explicitly when it comes to animating the avatars. And that's going to be working with animation loops. So animation loops, they can contain a lot of different animations at any given time. But essentially what it's going to be is a various sequences of animations for not just 3D characters, really for anything that you're animating. And so what I provided here on the screen is a very, 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 very simple version of an animation loop. These can become far more involved and complex. But for what we're doing today, I kept this one relatively of a low lift. So the animation loop that we're following today, and the reason, I'll tell you why we're going over this in a second, but the one that we're following today only has 3 steps. And where animation loops are going to come into play is when we had to go do some code, but most important, we got to download those animations. So before we get into Mixamo, we got to know what we're actually looking for versus just finding any old animations. And so ideally, what you're going to want to do when you're defining your animation loop for your character is start off with an idle animation. That animation is going to be essentially their default animation that they're going to do. And so since we're creating something that's going to have a chat UI, for example, the character needs to do something while it's waiting for input from the user. And so what I'll show you in just a second is what's known as the T-pose, which is just technically that's like the default pose for 3D characters, but we don't want our character to just hang out in a T-pose. We want to give them something that has a little more life to it. So we're going to actually start off as idle being our first animation. The second animation is going to be any sort of action you want them to take. And so I use happy as an example here since I'm doing something that's more emotion-based. And so essentially, the character will go from its idle animation to whatever action animation you give it next. And essentially AI is what's choosing that. But as it completes that idle animation, which loops, it just keeps doing that animation, it then heads into its invoked animation, which in our case is going to be happy. That idle animation from earlier, as I mentioned, it does get looped. That's something that it's going to continuously play. With that said, when we're choosing our idle animation, I'd recommend choosing something that's not going to be too much movement happening. But if that's the personality of your character, don't let me stop you. So I tend to go with something a little more subtle. And then for the actions that get invoked or the emotion-based animations that get invoked, I just go with something that looks right for the character. And then the final thing that's going to close out the loop is going to be going back to its idle animation. So when it's doing that invocation of that middle action, I've found it best to only have it do it once. You can also loop the animation to play over and over and over again, but it can sometimes look a little awkward depending on what the character's doing. You can chain multiple animations together, which can create some very interesting effects for what your character does. We're not chaining multiple animations today, but I want to let you know that you could do that if you would like to. But when we come out of that middle animation to the final idle animation, the character just goes back to its default animation. And then it just repeats that cycle over and over and over and over again. So with that said, we're going to head on over into Mixamo, and we're going to go find a model. So hopping back 1 second. Okay. So within Mixamo, I'm assuming by now you've been set up with an account. And in here, you're going to click Browse Characters. And so this is where you can see all of the 3D models that Mixamo provides. I happen to have Michelle already up here, and she's in what's called T-pose. That's that pose that I mentioned earlier. It's called T-pose because it looks like a letter T. This gives you an idea of what the character looks like, essentially, if it's not in movement, and it gives you a better view of the details of the character. Now, if you're looking for Michelle itself, the Michelle model, so you can follow along with what I'm doing, I want to say she's on the second page. So if you go to this page 2, and she'll be that second row, hopefully, for you. But that's the one that we're going to look at here for a second. So in here, in terms of how you can view more about this character, on the left-hand side, we have a couple of different buttons that you can press. So the first is going to be Enable Skeleton View. When you click the skeleton view, this is what Michelle looks like without all her clothes on. Well, she's not naked, but this is essentially what all of these models look like from a skeletal view. I know, right? Like she's yeah. But this is what all of the characters look like. If you are interested in learning more about creating 3D characters and animating them, this is essentially like your home right here. You will get used to this because the placement of all these different bones really determines how the animations come to life, if you will. But that little skeleton icon, it will enable the skeleton view. If you click it again, it'll disable it. Then the button below it is the rotate. So if you select that, you can click and drag to look at the character a little better. And so there's not a lot to see here for this character, but if you were to go to someone that has a couple more details in their outfit, it could be interesting. Then we also have the pan view just below rotate. If you select that, that gives you the option to click on the display area and then drag. I don't know how useful that might be, but if your view happens to get a little wonky and you're trying to get back to where things are, that's one thing you could do. There's also a reset, which I'll show you in just a moment. The one below that is a zoom. So if you click on zoom and then you click onto the view area and drag your mouse, you can zoom on the character a little more. And then there is a reset camera. So I mentioned if you need to reset everything, if you click that just below zoom, it'll reset to the default view. And then there's a toggle follow camera. It's not going to be relevant for what we're doing today, but I'll just let you know it exists. So right now, Michelle's in T-pose. She's not doing anything. What I would recommend, however, if you do not want to use the Michelle model, if you go back to that first page, this will give you the collection of characters that Mixamo has available. And there's a good variety, I will say. Michelle happens to be my favorite. I've been using her for a couple of years now, since I've been doing things with 3D characters. But they have, they have some different ones that are available in here. So for now, I would say select one of the characters, because what we're going to do now once you've selected your character, is move over into the animations. So as I mentioned, we're going to follow that animation loop. This is actually my favorite part because I just like seeing the characters move and do stuff. And within these animations, there are a ton of them. I believe you can also, I know they are getting to it. You do have the ability to filter. So if you click into the search bar, it'll give you some different options to choose from, but you're actually not just limited to what you see from a category perspective, because you can actually search for different terms. And so we'll search for some in a moment, but I just want to actually show you what happens once you've added an animation, once you selected an animation. So this dancing one is doing a lot. So we're going to click that one. When you click on it, the character will start doing it. And that's where these controls I mentioned earlier can be more helpful, because you're going to want to see, well, what does the character look like fully when they're doing the animation? And where this is super helpful, you may notice Michelle's arm is going through her leg. I don't know how she figured that one out, but she figured it out. But that's where, right, it is ancestral. But this is where we can start modifying some of the settings, which we'll do shortly. But for now, I would say what's helpful here is to pick an animation for the character to have. So right now, hopefully you are testing these out. I will tell y'all, when I first started using this is back when like people were like actually like twerking, and for whatever reason, Mixamo has a twerk on here, and it's not quite what you think. Like her hands are all in the wrong spot. But if you do filter out to like dance, for example, there's some interesting ones. There's also poses in here, as this like female dance pose, for example. And if you're looking for animations that provide just like everyday kind of like simple actions, if we go to talking, for example, there's like this one that I feel, depending on what's being said, it could be attitude, it could just be her regularly talking, but I like to use this one as an example. There are some on here where the character actually needs additional models to really bring it to life. So like the one that says pacing and talking on a phone, Michelle doesn't have a phone built into her hand. So if you were to give her one like that, and so she kind of walks away. So there we go. That toggle follow camera actually does come in handy. So if you have an animation where the character is really walking around and you don't want to have to keep dragging the camera, you'll click that toggle follow camera. But definitely take a look at the animations we have in here, but we will need to settle down at some point and choose. So with that said, what we're going to do is focus on first selecting an idle animation. So I mentioned idle is going to be that first animation that's going to enter in our animation loop. And it's just the thing that, in my case, Michelle's going to do when she's waiting for someone to send her a message. And so I personally, if you search just the term idle, it'll give you all the idle ones. I like this for this first red option on the second row here, because the character, while she's not really doing anything, she does shift her weight at some point. And to me, it creates a certain bit of realism that I personally like to go for when I'm doing any animation with characters. There isn't like an alternative one where her shoulders are just kind of just going up and down because she's breathing, and it's very, very subtle. But when you're building experiences that other people are going to be interacting with, depending on how real or close to realistic you'd like the avatar to be, I just say keep these sort of design details in mind, because it can make a difference. You might not even really see her moving here. So someone might think, is it not working, for example? But for something like the first one I showed where her weight shifts, it gives me an idea that, oh, okay, this is actually like doing something. Now, you may notice her hands are going in and out of her legs. You see that? That's not how we function in real life. So there are options on the right-hand side that you can use to adjust the different bones of the character. And so this is going to vary depending on the animation that you choose. And so with that said, for this idle animation, I can decrease the amount of breathing she's doing. I can change her stance a bit. I actually want to change the character arm space because I don't want her hands going into her legs. So if you increase it from 50, which is the default, up to, let's say, 80, it'll refresh. And what you should see is her arms get moved a little bit. Now, this is not quite where it should be. That's not really natural. So this is where you'll have to start playing with it a little bit. And so maybe I come down to more of like a 60 versus going up to like an 80. And in doing that, what I get now is something that's a little better. Her hands aren't going through her legs. I would personally stay here in that 60 range. This is going to vary depending on your character. Now, what we need to do once we've chosen our idle animation is we're going to download it. So you're going to click the download button. This is very important. Within the download settings, we have a couple different options here to choose from, but we're not going to change everything. I'm just going to zoom in here so you can see what's happening. So the format itself needs to be a FBX binary. If you do click the drop down, you'll see other options available. Please only select FBX binary. And then where it says skin, you're going to have options that say with skin, without skin. So for the very first animation your character is doing, whatever that default animation is going to be, you're going to download with skin. Skin in our case is going to be, remember when we made her as a skeleton and we saw nothing, and then we made her not a skeleton and we saw everything? The skin is the everything here. So the skin is essentially going to be all of what's covering the bones of the animation itself. You're going to download that. And I'll get into what happens if you don't download with the skin. So for now, for this very first one, we'll do with the skin. You're not changing frames per second. You're going to not change keyframe reduction. It should say 30 and none respectively. And then you're going to select download. So keep an eye on wherever you send your downloads because we're going to need to grab that in just a bit. But once you've downloaded it, you're good to go. Now, because we want our character to do more than just stay idle, we need to give her an animation. For the sake of today's workshop, I'd recommend at least downloading 2 more animations. You can definitely download way more, but for the sake of just getting the hang of how to set things up, I recommend 2 more animations. So I personally, since I want to do a happy animation, I'm just going to search for one that says happy. And I like using this first red one that popped up where she's kind of swaying her hands back and forth. But there's so many different ones you could choose from. It doesn't have to be this one particularly, but I would like for you to find a happy animation that you like for your character. And if you recall, we can adjust the hands over the arm space. And you'll notice that I don't have as many settings as before. That has changed this time around. And again, that's going to depend on the animation that you have selected. So what I'm going to do here is increase her arm space. Let's go up to maybe a 60 because I do see her arms going in her legs a little bit. And I think this is good. This will be good enough for where things are. Once you've chosen your happy animation, and you've adjusted the arms as well. And you don't have to just only change the arms on these animations. You can tweak any of the other things because it's your avatar. So once you have it set, what you're going to do is click download. We're going to still have FBX binary selected, but this time where it says skin, we're going to choose without skin. The reason that we're downloading all the following animations without skin is because we need to combine all these animations onto a single version of the model itself, and then we'll be able to cycle through them. So what we don't want is to have multiple models with the skin, and we're trying to combine the animations. Because what's going to happen is that Michelle's going to do her idle animation as her default. And then when we ask Michelle to do a different animation, we're not changing her look and feel. That's staying the same. We're only changing the bones that are associated, or the placement of the bones, what the bones are doing, the movement of the bones. So that's where that skeleton is important. So with that said, for the second animation that says happy, we're going to select without skin, and then we're going to download that. We're going to need one more animation just for good measure. And so coming back over to the search bar, I'm going to search for sad, okay? Now, there's some here that looks super pitiful and sad, but I do like this one because it's a little dramatic, and I would actually do this in real life. So as you can see, this is what Michelle looks like when she's sad, but there's other options that you can choose from. Her arms are a little not where they need to be, so I am going to adjust that to a 60. 60 seems to be the magic spot. So I think that's good. And she definitely looks sad. Poor girl. Like she just got some bad news. So we'll click download. And again, this time when we download, format is going to be FBX binary, and then we're going to do without skin. Okay. So we'll download that. Now, once you have all your animations downloaded, what I'd suggest doing is making sure you know where they actually have been saved to your computer, because what we're going to do now is head into Blender. So with that said, let me open up Blender. I see we have some Sims lovers in the chat. I grew up playing The Sims, and it became my whole personality for a couple of years. Okay. This is Blender. As I mentioned, there's a lot happening in here, but we're not going to do everything that's happening in here, which is really perfect and great. So Blender, as I mentioned, oh, I don't have it up on the screen. Let me put that on the screen for you all. Sorry about that. There we go. We should all see Blender now. So this is Blender, everyone. And I'll take you on a quick little tour of what's happening in here. But first things first, let's select General. There's a button that says General under New File. This is going to create a brand new Blender file for you. Once you've selected that, this is what your screen should look like. You should see a cube sitting in the middle. And there's also going to be two other objects. They're known as scene objects. If you're wondering how to zoom out to see that, on your mouse, you can select your scroll wheel. I don't have a regular sort of mouse. My scroll wheel technically is that middle part. But if you have a scroll wheel on your mouse, you can scroll forward and backwards to zoom in and out. So you have these other objects in here plus this cube. What I would like for you to do is right click anywhere on the screen. Like I have my mouse on like the top left, just anywhere. I'm going to right click and drag to select all those scene objects. And then the next thing you're going to do is click X on your keyboard. Once you've clicked X, you'll get a pop-up that says delete selected objects. You're going to select delete, and that deletes the objects. So for people who are interested in getting into Blender, Blender has a lot of shortcuts. What we just did was one of the shortcuts. So if there's anything you take away about this today, the X shortcut will delete something for you. There's a lot of shortcuts though that Blender has, and we're not going to dive into them all today, but I just want to let you know if you are choosing to learn more about Blender, that's going to be something that you're going to need to know. The next thing we're going to do is save this as well, because I've had Blender crash on me before, and it's not fun when you're right in the middle of something. So to save your file, you're going to go to File, Save As, and then you're going to give your file a name. So I'm just going to call mine Demo for the sake of today. You can call it whatever you would like, and then you'll save as. So once you have the scene saved, we can actually start getting into what's happening in here in Blender. If you're curious to know about what's what, over on the left-hand side, there's some different menu options that we could choose from, but guess what? We're not using any of those today. So that's lovely. On the right-hand side, however, we are going to be doing some things over here. So on this right-hand side, I don't know if I can zoom in. No. Unfortunately, I can't zoom in this window. Sorry about that, everyone. But on the right-hand side, we have what is known as a scene collection, and that's where all of the objects that we place into our scene are collected. So the cube earlier was a scene object. The light that we deleted was a scene object, for example. The camera we deleted was a scene object. If it's not working on your Mac, that's not good. I personally don't use Blender on my Mac these days. I see Brittany downloaded an older version. If you have to download an older version, that's also fine as well. You don't need the latest Blender to get this working. So I would definitely say, yeah, give that a try. So over here within the scene collection is where we're going to actually be able to see our models, and we're going to do some changing of things over there as well. So in terms of a Blender tour, that's really like what you need to know for now for Blender, with the exception of this part that's down at the bottom. If you hover your mouse at the very bottom of the screen, you'll see what is, which looks to be an area where you can look at animations playing, because that is where we can see that. So all I did, to reiterate, I brought my mouse down to where this line was and I dragged it up, and that'll just give you a better view of what's happening here. We're going to be doing some work in here, and yes, Blender is definitely a heavy application. I used a live stream with it, and I had to stop when I didn't have a computer that was like beefy enough for it, live streaming plus running Blender. But we're going to be doing our work out of here. And what we're going to be doing is bringing in those models from earlier. So please make sure you remember where you downloaded them. And we're going to be doing some updates to its animation to merge them all and combine them here. But before we dive into that part, I'm just going to drag this area back down here, and we're going to import the models. So to import, we're going to first start off with the one that has the skin. That should be your idle animation. You're going to go to File, Import, and if you recall, we downloaded the FBX models. So you're going to select FBX, and then you're going to go to wherever you downloaded those models, and mine are somewhere. Let's do by date. Okay. And I just want the date modified. Okay, mine are at the very bottom here. So I'm just going to rename one of my idle one, because I had multiple idles downloaded. It probably won't like that, so I'll just leave it. But your idle one, what you're going to do is select that idle animation, and you're going to click Import FBX. And then if you scroll back in using that middle mouse button that I mentioned, you can see your model. Now you might be wondering, why is she gray? I thought she had some color. She does. What you will need to do is change the mode to C. And so at the very top of Blender, there are these like four sort of circle options. And right now we're in what is the viewport shading. We're not going to see the color, but if you want to really see the color, if you switch to the one that's the second from the right, that'll give you the material preview, and that's where you can see the colors. Seeing the colors is not relevant for what we're about to do, but if you're wondering what happened to my girl's colors, that's where you can go and see them. I'm gonna come back down to the shaded version now. So you have this character in here. The next thing that you're going to need to do is rename this one. So over on the right-hand side where we're collecting, where I mentioned all of the objects are collected, you're going to right-click twice, like double left-click, twice onto the name, and you're going to rename it idle. So just IDL. It likely says armature already. We're going to rename that idle. The reason being is that when we go to add in the other animations, they're also going to be named as armature, and it starts getting confusing when you don't know which one's which. So for this first one, you're going to change it to say idle. Now from here, the next thing that you're going to do is go to File, Import, FBX, and now we're going to import the next animation. And so for me, I already have these here, so I'll grab one of these. It's going to be that happy one. So I'll click Import FBX. And like I mentioned, I told y'all, it says armature. So what you're going to do is click the name of that one, change it to happy. And then finally, we're going to import that final one. So we'll go to File, Import FBX. And of course, it's taken to a completely different folder this time. And we're going to do the one it's your sad one. So I'll import that. And we're going to change the name on that one. So what we should have so far is an idle animation in here, a happy animation, and a sad animation, or whatever naming or animations you chose to download and install. Now, once you've done this, the next thing that we're going to need to do is expand that bottom area. I went to drag it with my mouse and I pulled it up. On the far left side, we have what looks like a little clock. And so when you click that, it'll give you a menu of options, and there's 4 categories: general, animation, scripting, and data. We're going to choose an option that's under animation. It's going to be non-linear animation. So again, what we did to get here, I expanded this area. I selected the clock on the far left. And if you don't have the clock, then it's probably a different icon. So just select that. And then it should give you this sort of menu. And then under animation, I've selected non-linear animation. When you have non-linear animation up, you'll see all the animations that we've added, as well as their brand new names that we've given them, okay? So for mine, it says idle, sad, and happy. What we now need to do is push all these down. You could think of it as pushing all the animations into one character. Now, if you recall, that idle one is the one that actually has the skin. So just keep that in mind. But for now, this is going to be incredibly hard to see because it's tiny. So I'm going to describe it to my best ability. On this screen, on the far left-hand side, on the bottom where you have all the animations listed, there is going to be this little button that looks like, if you hover over it, it says push down action. Just keep that in mind, okay? Don't press it yet, but we're going to use that shortly. Before we do that, you'll click that first animation that you have, and we're going to rename it there as well. So if you click on, like in my case, happy, there's a name that's already here. You're going to rename that to the animation name. And you're going to do that for each one. So notice how it no longer says Mixamo, it says happy there. That's what it should do. So you'll click that next one, and then we're going to rename that to its respective name. And then for sad, select that, rename it sad. So to recap on what I just did, I selected the animation, and then on the right-hand side, there's a field that had its name. I renamed it according to the name of the animation itself. The reason that we're doing this is because when we need to actually call those animations by their name, we don't want to call it Mixamo.xyz, blah, 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 blah. We want to call it what it actually is. So that'll help us out when we start doing things with code. Now, once you've done that, coming back to that little icon that says push down action, what you're going to do is select that for each animation that you've imported. So you can select the first one, and you'll notice that it looks like nothing happened, but something happened, trust me. So once you select that for the first one, you'll select it for the next icon, for the next action, and then you'll select it for the final action. And then once you have all those selected and set up, we're going to delete the armatures for the ones that do not have the skin. And so to do that, what I'd recommend doing is, if I'm gonna scroll in on Michelle, if you wanna pan so you can get her a little more focus, on this right-hand side where we have this little hand icon, you can select that and drag, okay? What we wanna do is delete anything that does not have skin. So in my case, if I click on this armature, which is the little bone thing that's that we see sticking out here, this one is sad. So we wanna delete that. I taught you how to delete things just a second ago. Once you have that selected, make sure it says the appropriate one on the right is highlighted. So in my case, it's sad. And then you can click X and then delete. And then that's gone. The animation's not gone. The reason why is that we pushed them all down together. The next thing that we're going to do is select the happy animation. And then we're going to click X. And then we're going to delete that. And then that's it. Don't delete anything else. If you delete the animation with the skin, or the armature with the skin, you're going to have to go back and either Control Z or re-add it. But right now, the only one that should be left is the one that's your idle animation. You should see the skin. So now that you've done that, you'll click File, Save As, and then you'll save the model with its respective name. So I'm just going to call this demo. Oops, sorry, not save as. Sorry, everyone. I'm in the wrong place. You're going to go to File. You're going to Export. Now, we're actually exporting as a glTF, not an FBX. glTF plays better in what we're going to be doing here in just a moment. So in the glTF, you're going to select that, and then you're going to give it a name. We don't need to change any of the other settings in here. So I'm calling mine Demo Michelle. And you should see the file type is GLB, okay? And so you'll click Export glTF 2.0, and then that's all we're doing in Blender. There's nothing else that we're doing in Blender. We can close out Blender from here, but do remember where you saved your model. What I like to do at this step is go test things out. And so I lost you all for a second. 1 second. Okay, like I stopped the screen share. So what I like to do at this point is test things out in a viewer that's going to let me see the character moving. And so with that said, what we're all going to do is navigate to this website, and I'll place it in the chat. This is going to be the Babylon.js Sandbox. If you're ever adding any animations to characters and you want to make sure that they're all there, this is going to be the place where you can go test that out. And so I placed the link in the chat. When you navigate to this link, let me go back to the other one. Is this where I want to be? Hopefully this is it. Okay. So when you're in here, hopefully we'll see.
So I just want to jump in really quick because we're sharing our like mini window that's showing our workshop. And we also have a quick question in the chat, guys, if you want to ask it.
Yes, go ahead.
That was me, right?
Yes, yes, you.
Okay, I couldn't type fast enough either. So quick question, just because I want to make sure I'm following along correctly. So in Blender, when we look at the collection, how do I know I saved it properly so it doesn't delete the thing entirely? Does that make sense? So I know that I'm just deleting the animation's still there, but I'm not deleting the entire file.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let me bring my Blender back up. 1 moment. Let me get the screen share working again as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, can you see Blender?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So you'll know that you've deleted and saved the right stuff. It's kind of a 2-step process. I can't go back and redo it because I've done it already. But over on this left-hand side where we used to have 3 different animations showing, when I click that push down button, it pushed them all down. So if you did that step, then that step's good. But then over here on the right-hand side, when we go to delete everything that's not idle, you should only be left with your idle animation. And that's how you'll know you've done the right stuff so far. Okay, I see thumbs up. Cool. So let me do my best to get back to oops, I think I shared the wrong thing. Sorry, y'all. Okay. Okay, so this is the Babylon.js viewer that I mentioned. Once you're in here, you can drag or go locate wherever you have your models saved. And so for mine, I know that mine is saved in this folder. And if I were to open up the one that I had made, I can drag that in here. And then you'll see the character itself. And so right now on the bottom right-hand side is where you can go through and cycle through the different animations. So right now it's on happy. But if you click that, you'll see, I can also see the idle one. And so that'll hopefully also confirm if you're not sure whether you did everything right. This is where you can see the different animations. You'll notice there's a couple in here that you didn't add. Those are all the T poses. They're in there by default, but we're not going to use those. And so there's like that sad one, for example. So that's how you can validate that your animations are done appropriately. Okay, we've done a lot so far. We still have to go through some code and we have almost 15 minutes left. I'm going to take a quick 1-minute break for everyone before we dive. Well, let's do a 3-minute break. Let's do 3. And then we're going to head over into VS Code once we get back, and we're going to get through, I'll show you the different stuff in the code that you can modify as well. So I am going to put us on a break.
Nice. I'll put on a quick 3-minute timer too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll play a little music too while we're doing that.
Watch the sunshine on my face. Two-tone colors embrace. Might just stay out the way. Blue skies hover in place. Clouds got carried away. Trees they laugh and they sway. Only thing left is the day. Dreaming of tomorrow. Give my mind a break. Happiness or sorrow. Maybe it's the same. Gotta get that feeling that everybody craves. Drowning in the spotlight. No one left to save me from hiding from everybody else. Fighting, trying to get back to myself. Hiding from everybody else. Fighting, trying to get back to myself. Running away, nobody here to complain to. God called, I need a break. Wanna pray, but I'm afraid to. I hope he still let me hold his arms. I wanna go way outside the unknown. Till then, I'ma just float, dreaming of tomorrow. Give my mind a break. Happiness or sorrow, maybe it's the same. Gotta get that feeling that everybody craves. Drowning in the spotlight, no one left to save me from hiding from everybody else. Fighting, trying to get back to myself. Hiding from everybody else. Fighting, trying to get back to myself. Honestly, I've been craving pieces of me I'm saving for somebody else. Honestly, it's amazing.
All right.
I still face myself.
Are we on the timer?
We have 18 seconds left.
Okay, perfect. Let me know when that 18 seconds is up.
Yeah, we got 8 seconds left. I also, for everyone still here with us, thanks for staying. We do have the feedback survey in the chat. So, oh, there's our timer. So
Yay.
feel free to fill that out when you're ready and we'll get back to it.
All right. So if at this stage, if you're behind on the model part, like I mentioned, don't worry. I have one already set up for you, and we're going to go get that in the code right now, and you can continue with that. When you're able to go back and rewatch this video, the steps will be there, and I'll also update the repository with the written out steps as well. With that said, we are going to head into the repo and get the code and bring that over into Visual Studio Code as well. So let me share that. Okay. So in the repository that we started off in, we're going to get the code and we're going to clone that in VS Code. And so if you haven't cloned before, there is a very easier way to do that in VS Code from the command palette. But what you're going to first need is the URL for the repository itself. And so the URL is the same thing that's on this screen that's also in the browser when we started off and looked at all the requirements for this. So once you have that URL, what we're going to do is come into VS Code and we're going to run the command that says git clone. And once you've selected that, you're going to be prompted to enter in the URL for the repository. And then because the repository doesn't have like a ton of things in it, it shouldn't take too long to clone it. But that's going to be where we kick things off. So with that said, I'm going to head over into Visual Studio Code for you all. And okay, this is what that looks like. So I already have the code up, but in the event that you don't, you're going to do either Control-Command-Shift-P. This is the command palette I mentioned, and you're going to search for git clone. Mine happens to be here because it was recently used. But once you've selected that, you'll be prompted here to put that URL in there. So that's where you're going to put the URL to the repository. You'll also be asked to choose where you want to save your code. So save it somewhere that makes most sense to you. And then from there, it'll make a clone of the repo for you, and then it'll ask you if you want to open it up. So once it opens it up, you should see the code that we have here. I already have mine open, so I'm not going to reclone it. Now in here, I'll go over some of the main things you should be aware of. This public folder is where we're going to actually store the model. So if you don't have your model already together, you're looking for a model to use that's set up, this is where that model is. It's going to be in public models, and then I have it called michelle-demo.glb. I'll show you shortly how to go and just save yours in here if you did create one. And then the next thing that we're going to be looking at in a moment is going to be what's my screen looks a little different, but it's in the SRC folder. It'll be a file that says main.ts. And this is where we're going to be doing our code. So I mentioned I provided the code already for you all, so that way we don't have to code from scratch. But this is what the main.ts file looks like. This is where we set up the 3D scene itself. Then we also have an environment variables file in mind, but you're going to create one and store your environment variables in there. And I'll take you through that step in just a second. The final one is the index.html. So if you're curious about modifying the look and feel of the page that gets rendered, which I'll do in a bit, this is where you can come and modify that. So first things first, what I would like for you to do in this folder, if you right click where it says public /models, and if you click reveal in File Explorer, what I would like for you to do is take that model that you created and copy it into here. It should be the .glb version of it. And you can remove the Michelle-demo one that I have, but if you want to just use the Michelle one, that's fine. The reason that we're bringing your model here is that we need to reference it when we go to render the page itself. So that's the first thing. So again, what I did was I right-clicked on public, selected reveal in File Explorer, and then within public, within models, we're adding in the model that you saved earlier. Now, once you have that set up, the next thing that we're going to do is install all the dependencies that we need. So this is where the Node.js part comes into play. In my screen, I have 3 dots at the top. Yours might be fully expanded. You're going to open up the terminal. So you'll select terminal, new terminal. And then in here, what you're going to run is npm install. That's the command that you'll run. Now, if you're not quite sure of the full setup instructions, I do also include them in the repo itself. And so let me pull that up for you just quickly so you can see that. 1 second. Here we go. So within the getting started, we've cloned the repo, and now you're going to do the npm install, and that'll install all the dependencies. Once you have the dependencies installed, we also need to create a .env file to hold the environment variables. So this is where you're going to go and grab your CreateHER API key and also save them. You can copy what's here and create a new .env file, and then you'll paste the environment variables in there. I'll show you mine. I think mine gets a little truncated, so you can't see the whole thing. But let me share that. So it would look like .env, and so these keys will be no good shortly, but you'll create one that says Anthropic API key, and then an ElevenLabs one as well. And then we need to create the API keys themselves. So with that said, in creating your API keys, what that's going to entail is creating them over in the respective platforms. So for Anthropic, you're going to be in the Claude console. And so if you need that link again, we'll put that in the chat for everyone. And so in here, you're going to go on the left-hand side where it says Manage API Keys, and then you'll create a key. So if you click Create Key, you can choose your default workspace if you would like, and then you're going to give your key a name. And so you're going to name it, I'll just do like demo for now. When you click add, it's only going to show you your key one time. So even if you take the one that I'm showing on the screen, it's not going to be working after the stream. So you will create your own key, you'll copy the key, and then once you have that copied, what you're going to do is go back into Visual Studio Code, and in VS Code, what you'll need to do is paste it in for that respective environment variable. So right now I just did the one for Anthropic, for example, and you paste that in, and then you will need to do the same thing for ElevenLabs. So if I go back to the one for ElevenLabs, I'll close that guy. Within the ElevenLabs page, and I'll give you that link as well, you're going to click on API keys in that center area. You'll click Create Key. And then this one's going to be a little different. You're going to give it a name. I'll just call it Demo again. And you want to select Restrict Key. Now that gives you the ability to limit what you can use the key for. We only need text-to-speech for this one. So you're going to select Access next to text-to-speech, and then you'll click Create Key. So again, I named it. You are going to keep Restrict Key selected, and then you're going to click Access for text-to-speech, and then you'll create the key. It'll then give you the key on the screen, and you can copy that to the clipboard. It's only going to show these keys once. So if you miss out your first chance, you got to recreate it. Once you have your keys available, you're going to go to Visual Studio Code. You're going to put that back in there accordingly for your ElevenLabs API key. And you're going to do Control-S or Command-S if you're on a Mac and save this file. Once you have that saved, once you have everything also installed, the next thing that you can do is actually run this to test it. And so if you added your own model in the code within the main.ts file, you're going to scroll down to the area that should be around line 30 or so, or line 29, that says load the glTF model. If you're new to VS Code, you can do Control-F, and then you can search for it that way. So you can do load the glTF model, and it'll bring you there if that's easier. And then once you have that, you're going to change the name of the model that's in here to the one that you've named. So for mine, it's Michelle-Demo. That's the default. But if your model's name is something else in this public folder, That's what you're going to put here for the name of that model, okay? Now, the next thing that you're going to do if you created your own model is we need to update the animations that are in here as well. So if you can scroll down just a bit, we have hopefully your idle model, or your idle action is called idle, so we shouldn't need to change that. But further down the way, we will need to do some updates to your animation names if you're using your own animations. So the idle one, there should be nothing you need to do with that. But for the other ones, that's where we might need to do some changes for stuff, okay? So let me get to where that is, and I'll tell you where it is. So if you search for the term map emotion to animation, and this is commented as such in the code for you, it'll bring you roughly for me around line 161. And this is where we have the different animations that we can assign to different emotions. So I have a happy animation, we have a sad, and then we have the idle. The idle is going to be the else animation. So we don't need to change that one per se. But for the happy and the sad, essentially what we're doing here is if the emotion that has been identified is happy, we're going to do the happy emotion. This is also why we renamed the emotions earlier, because if the names were much more different and like not clear what it is, it can get very confusing for the person that's creating this. And so if you have happy, use happy, sad, use sad. Now, once you've done that, we can now run. If you didn't bring your own model in and you're using the one I provided, you don't need to change any of that. This was just for me to show you if you brought your own in. Now, to run this, so we can view this in the browser, in the command line, you'll enter npm run dev. That'll start up the server, and you will, it'll be run locally. And then you can click the link that's output in the terminal. I need to change my screen share so you can see it, but one second. Okay, you should be seeing now, this is what it looks like once it's been run. You have a chat interface, and then the model's on the right. So for me, Michelle's just idle, she's doing nothing. Assuming you've set up your respective API keys, you can enter in a prompt to test the animation. So if I want to make sure that she does happy when I see something that's more of a happy thing, I can say, I'll use the phrase, it's my birthday, because that looks to be a happy thing, but it's not my birthday. So I submit that, and she's doing my happy pose. That's the happy, or my happy animation. She's just swaying back and forth. But if I have to now follow up, and because right now she says, I hope you're having an amazing day. Are you doing anything special to celebrate? If I can say, unfortunately, I have to work today. Let's see if she thinks that's happy or sad. Now she's sad, because it's sad. It's your birthday, and now you got to work. So we see that the animations are being invoked. And I have the code set up to log what the AI thinks is being said. So if you were to right click anywhere and click inspect, it'll open up the inspector for you. If you go to the console, you'll see 2 items have been logged. The first one is happy, and then the second one is sad. So that is working appropriately. I know we're just here at time. I'll just take you very briefly through where things are in the code if you do want to tweak that. Oh, that's good to hear you'll be at this all night, because there's a lot that you can do. It just takes some time for sure. So let me just show you back in VS Code really quick. So here in VS Code, if you want to close the server, you can do Control-C, and that'll like stop it. So in here, I'm going to close this terminal. I don't need it right now. There's 2 different functions that's doing the, that's controlling everything. So the first one, and I will update the repo to reflect this for anyone that's still exploring this on their own. But the first one is going to be Anthropic messages create. So if you search for anthropic.messages.create, This is where we actually have the system message or the full setup to actually do the emotion analyzation, if you will. And so the prompt that's here essentially looks like, I want to show you so bad. Let me show you. It looks like this. This is just an easier way to see it. But this is how the system prompt is written to analyze. So basically what it does is it takes a user input, it then passes it over to the Claude model, and then it determines whether when to say something is neutral, happy, or sad. But the only thing we're outputting from that particular iteration is whether something is happy, neutral, or sad. And so therefore, we're not getting the full response back. But you might be wondering, well, we saw the AI say something about your birthday. Where does that get done? There's another function in here that's Anthropic.messages.create. Oh, I mixed them up. Sorry about that. But there's a different one in here for analyze, emotion, and animate. Should have been this one. Sorry about that. And then this one is the messages create. And this actually creates the actual interactions, whereas the AI will take the user input and then actually respond. So we have two different functions here doing two different things. The output from the user, how do I say this? The output from the AI is what gets posted in the chat UI. But in order to get that, we have to get the input from the user, which then gets analyzed by that first function, and then it gets passed. So things are just basically being passed from one to the other, basically from AI to AI. Now, the last thing I'll show you, because you might be wondering, well, whatever happened to that ElevenLabs thing that we set up? So for that, that's a different function in itself. And where that got set up is further down in the code. I have it commented out by default for everyone, but you can uncomment it. Down in here, you can search for, it's a phrase that says audio disabled. And then in there, you'll see a big section of the code that's been commented out. Can't miss it. If you remove what's been commented away and then save it, what's now going to happen is once we get the text back from the Claude model of how it wants to respond, it's going to pass that text over to the ElevenLabs model. It'll go from text to speech and generate an audio clip for us. So what that looks like in reality, if I open back up the terminal, this would be the very last thing I show you all for today. npm run dev. If we open that back up, and I'll switch my screen share for you all. And I have to do audio this time so you can hear it. If I now say today's my birthday, hopefully we should hear the voice of Michelle. All right, that is the voice, as I mentioned in ElevenLabs, of, I think it's like Nia or something like that. You kind of heard her. Okay, yeah. So the audio's in there, it's playing. But you can assign the different voices based on whichever voice you want to use in ElevenLabs. And where you would basically find that here in ElevenLabs, you can explore voices within the voices area. There's a ton of them in here. I have some that are saved. Once you find the voice that you like, what you're going to do, there's going to be 3 dots on the far right-hand side that you can select. The one that I'm using right now is called Nia Davis, Black Female. If you click the 3 dots and then copy voice ID, it'll copy the ID to your clipboard for you. And then back over in Visual Studio Code, what you just need to do from here is search for the term voice ID. And I have it already set up there for you with the Nia voice that you heard. But this is where you would come and paste in that ID. And you can also change any other settings that I have in here for different AI setups. But this is essentially the sample that's available for you to go use in anything that you're building. I know we covered a lot. And with that said, the repo has the code. I'll work on putting in some more steps in there for you all today, in case you need to go back and actually read how to do a lot of this setup. But again, this is a very just getting started in this space. It's definitely something that it takes some time, but I feel pretty confident that you all can definitely get this up and running and working, for sure. So what I will leave you all with is my information. So definitely, if you want to stay in touch, feel free to reach out. Email is there at the bottom. It's hello@prettywiredbuilds.com. I'll put my LinkedIn in here as well. Oh, my little box I was typing on got covered. April Gittens. So that's my LinkedIn. Oops, I didn't spell LinkedIn right. Sorry about that. LinkedIn.com/n. So that's April Gittens. And yeah, if you're also, by the way, if you're into Python or trying to figure out how to learn Python, I'm starting up a stream next week where I'll be streaming twice a week, teaching Python concepts from very beginning for people that are brand new to programming. So 1 hour a week or 1 hour twice a week, one concept per stream. So definitely feel free to check that out. I do mention it on my LinkedIn as well. And I'll be sharing more about that throughout next week when next week gets here. But I hope you all enjoyed this session. Like I said, I will update the repo with some written instructions for you all if you're deciding to use this in anything that you're creating, for sure. There's some very powerful things. If you're also curious to know more about moving mouths, because right now Michelle only moves her body, but her mouth doesn't move. That's a completely different rabbit hole altogether. You'll need to become familiar with what are called Visemes, and I'll put that term in the chat for you. But Visemes is basically, the best way to water down and say it is different mouth shapes. And so essentially what you can do is animate your character's mouth shape to sync with whatever it is being said. There are plugins. I know Unity, which is where you can do some game dev development. They have a plugin that you can use to set that up, or you can always do it from scratch. But it gets very interesting, very more deeply involved. It's not as technical though, believe it or not. It's just more so, it's more of knowing animation, if anything. And if you're up for that challenge, I recommend giving it a try. I've done it. I will definitely say it is some work. So yeah, and I think the link is Unity 3D. I think that's how the URL for Unity is. Let me double check that though.
Nice. And if there are any questions, I know we're over time, but if anyone has one question, we could maybe get through one question, but I'll just say, first of all, thank you so much, April, for this amazing workshop. Give April some hearts, some confetti, some claps for an amazing workshop. This has been so amazing. I do want to say, for anyone who's still here, please fill out our feedback survey. I'll just put it up here for anyone who has their phone out and just wants to grab that. Okay, great, that popped up. Perfect. But let us know how we did. The feedback really helps us out and make sure that we're getting amazing facilitators like April, and we can continue to put on this amazing programming. So this has been great. We have one quick question from Brittany. Okay, great, excellent. Brittany, if you want to come up and ask your question.
Hi, this was an amazing experience, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
My question is very quick. So I'm, of course, always adding things about what I want to learn. And this last week, I stumbled across projection mapping, and I was wondering if I would be able to combine the two somehow.
And what
And
was it?
I guess projection mapping is, you know, anything about it, or if I would be able to like combine the two and I guess like place the avatar.
Oh, yeah. There is potential for combining the two itself. Are you looking more so to like place the avatar? Is it more so just placing avatar in like a real world environment? Is that what you're
Yes.
trying to get to?
Mhm.
Okay. So you can do that. But there's platforms like, oh man, the name just left me. Is it PTC that does it? I'd have to find the names itself, but there are different platforms that actually can anchor 3D models to real world objects. So I've seen things where people might say like, scan this QR code and then like whatever AR things appear in the scene. And so Adobe used to have something for setting that. I think they might still do, Adobe Aero, if they didn't get rid of it. But that was like a very like friendly way to get started with it. Snapchat does it. If you happen to be into doing any development with like AR glasses, for example, they have a Snap Spectacles program that they run. And if you're building for that particular platform, you can anchor 3D objects to real world objects. Sometimes it's just a matter of like object detection. So I know earlier I mentioned you can scan a QR code and things appear. But essentially what you can do is, the way it gets set up is that it recognizes whatever object that you specify in your setup to recognize. And then you can apply things that are known as spatial anchors, and that'll anchor the different objects to whatever in your environment. So I would say, yes, these can definitely combine and be used. The one thing I will say to everyone, not just for this use case, if you are doing anything with 3D avatars in the real world production sort of environment, keep cost in mind, because the more people that's chatting with your avatar, your model usage is it's like taking a hit, basically. And so in the code that I provide you all, you might see I limit the amount of tokens for the output from the model. And limiting the amount of tokens is going to help keep costs down. But, you know, Brittany, you might be building something super popular and everybody wants to use it. And so if something like that happens, you'll have to start thinking through, how can I mitigate costs while keeping my app up and running without basically having a super expensive thing that you're maintaining. Some spatial anchor platforms or products that people offer also have fees associated with it, because all those anchors have to live somewhere. And so they typically live in the cloud. So you will be paying also for any hosting fees too. I just like people to know all this before they start diving down these rabbit holes, is that when you're building something to test out, the cost is relatively low, but when you are ready for that deployment phase, there's different costs you'll need to keep in mind. But as a whole, what we shared today, absolutely. Anything you create with this avatar, the main difference is that you wouldn't create it for a web-based UI like I did. You would create it for the environment that it's going to be in instead.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for that question, Brittany. That was a great question. All right, y'all, it's 3:45. We've been here a minute, okay? We've been here a minute. We learned a lot.
Thanks for hanging on, y'all. I appreciate it. I know it's a lot.
So I'm excited about the rewatch for sure. As usual, the recording from today will be up on the CreateHER Fest YouTube channel within 24 hours. We'll also add any resources and links, as well as the repo that were mentioned today, so you can rewatch, pause, build at your own pace. As many of you know, our Quest bot has been down, but I worked through a short-term solution. So just look out in the recap email that'll go out after this, probably about an hour or two after this, with information on how to submit quests again. So thank you all for joining. Stay active in the Discord as well, as per usual. That's pretty much the first place where we announce certain things. Our Ideathon is coming up. We're coming up to the end of our Learnathon, which has been amazing. And when we really think back on all the workshops that we've attended, all the things that we've learned, like we've learned a lot. So I'm excited for going into the new phase as well. Meet us again on Sunday for our next workshop, which will be Voice and Pitch for Power with Melanie Monique. So you're gonna learn how to translate technical ideas into clear narratives that resonate. So if you have an issue with public speaking, this is gonna be the spot. Melanie definitely knows how to put you on the spot. So I highly recommend signing up for that. If you're not subscribed to our event calendar, definitely go through that as well. But that's pretty much it. Like I said, fill out the feedback survey, and I'm excited to see you all either in Discord, on LinkedIn, or at the next workshop. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.